Hi, can you please state and spell your name for the court reporter?
Samantha Knobs, Samantha Knobs.
And what is your occupation?
I'm a high school English teacher.
And did you know a man named Alex Woodworth?
Yes.
When did you first know him?
I started working at a coffee shop in November of 2013, and he was a regular customer, so probably shortly after that.
And is this coffee shop Racy's?
Yeah, Racy Dillings.
And so did you become friends with Alex?
Yes, as a customer first. So he was there a lot, oftentimes for hours. And you just get to know the regular customers fairly well. And eventually we became friends, and he started working there at one point.
How would you describe Alex when you first observed him as a customer?
Alex was, we would joke and say he basically lived there because he would come in with books and he would be there for hours and hours. He had his regular spot that he sat in. He kind of looked like a very young version of an old man. We would joke that he would just sip his coffee and read his books and kind of keep to himself, at least when he first started coming to the coffee shop.
And around do you know what year you started to become friends with Alex?
I would say probably towards the end of 2014. Yeah, maybe like November, December. We had become closer.
And were you friends with Alex up until his death?
Yes.
And so would you and Alex hang out outside of Racy's?
Yeah, so it started off as hanging out a lot at Racy's. I think the crew there, when you're not working, you're typically still there hanging out. So it kind of started off that way, but we would occasionally go and grab a beer together, sometimes after work, or just visit each other at work.
And how would you describe Alex's personality?
Objection. Sustained.
So in November of 2017, did you learn that Alex was involved in a relationship?
Yes.
And did you learn who that relationship was with?
Yes.
And who was it with?
Ezra McCandless.
And were you familiar with the defendant?
Yes.
How did you know her?
She also would come into the coffee shop.
Do you know when you got to know her?
It was probably the summer before that, November, so maybe just a few months before that.
Okay, summer of 2017?
Yes.
And I guess if I can back up a little bit from, you learned in November of 2017, Alex was in a relationship with the defendant.
Yes.
Before that, did you know Alex when he was involved in relationships?
Irrelevant. What is relevance?
I think based on the defendant's characterization of Alex, I think prior observations of relationships is relevant.
Well, I'm going to sustain the objection unless there's, some,
Okay.
just sustain.
And so you knew the defendant beginning the summer of 2017.
Yeah. Yes.
And she was how did you know her again?
She was a customer. I'd only met her a handful of times, so by no means did I know her well, but I knew of her.
So fair to say you were much closer with Alex than the defendant?
Yes.
Did you learn that the defendant was involved in a relationship with Jason Mengel?
Yes.
Objection, irrelevant. Overruled.
And what did the defendant tell you about her relationship with Jason Mengel?
Objection. Overruled.
In November, that same November, I had been told that she was trying to actively leave that relationship. There was a day that I went to the coffee shop and I was visiting Alex there, and she was there as well. And we were all kind of talking, but I asked her if she wanted to go get a drink. And we went across the street to a bar, which I learned she wasn't old enough to be in when she was asked to leave. And when we were at that bar is when she told me, she kind of debriefed about some of the things that she'd been going through in that relationship. And, I shared some experiences as well. It was kind of just like a bonding moment of, talking about unhealthy relationships and the importance of kind of leaving those.
And so, was there anything specific she told you about the relationship with Jason Mingle?
I was under the impression by our conversation that he was very controlling, and she seemed to feel uncomfortable and was struggling to leave that relationship.
And do you know when you had that conversation with the defendant, when you went to a bar?
I think that was near the end of November, maybe very early December.
And did you later learn that the defendant and Alex's relationship ended?
Yes.
How did you learn about that?
On February 25th, I was texting with Alex. He was going to be coming to my apartment because he was going to take over the lease from my current roommate. And I told him, we were just discussing the lease, and actually simultaneously I'd received a message from Ezra on Facebook asking if she could come and look at the apartment because I'd made a public post saying that I had a room to fill. So when I was texting Alex about the apartment, I also told him that Ezra had reached out and was showing interest as well. Up to that time, I didn't know that anything had happened between them, but he asked if I could not mention him because they'd had a falling out the day before, which would have been February 24th.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 152. I'll just stand up here if that's all right. If you turn to the second page of that exhibit, there's some highlighted portions. And if you could read number 30, that's an outgoing message to you. Is that right? Could you read that for the jury?
Yes. Things just went really bad between us, and I don't think she's going to be in town again.
And how did you respond?
Oh, fuck. What happened?
And then down below right there, how did Alex respond?
Jason found out and had a fit at Racy's. Ezra got stressed out and blew up at me for not talking about my past. Woke up to a text asking me to forget her name and not talk to her again.
Thank you. Move Exhibit 152 into evidence.
Okay.
Chapter 90403 cumulative, I think the content is already in. I don't know that we need to document 152.
All right. Well, I'm going to overrule if you'd like to. I'll receive it. And again, any objections previously made or noted. Counsel, also your microphone is off, but that's okay. You can keep it off unless you need it. Okay. All right, go ahead.
And after that, did Alex make any steps to move into this new apartment with you?
Yes, he came over and got an application, signed the application, and he had paid the $30 application fee, and then was approved by the landlords and the property manager.
And after Alex sent you this text, did you see him after that?
Yes.
And did you notice any change, visible change in Alex's demeanor?
I went into the coffee shop, I believe it was March 10th, and he seemed troubled. He just seemed more quiet. It was a short interaction that night. And then he came to the apartment on March 13th to meet the property manager. And then once she left, we talked for a while. And I guess I understood why he was upset.
And did you also learn that there was a potential sexual assault investigation pertaining to the defendant and John Hansen?
Yes.
No foundation.
No rule. I think this sounds like a foundational question.
Were you aware that the defendant and John Hansen had some sort of relations?
Objection, no foundation. This witness does not have a foundation to testify.
Well,
Her awareness is not based upon personal knowledge. It is based upon gossip or hearsay.
all right, well, I guess let's start that way. Let's go back. Foundation, any person.
And I can move on. Did you ask Alex something about the defendant and her relationship with John Hansen?
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
That's her statement. So what did you say to Alex regarding a sexual assault investigation?
Objection, hearsay, irrelevant.
Well, so you're saying it's what did this witness say
Yes.
to
What did
Alex?
what did you say to Alex? It's her statement to Alex.
Well, all right, I'm going to overrule. I'm going to allow you to answer the question.
I was aware that there was an accusation between the defendant.
Move to strike, no foundation.
Okay, well, I'm going to strike the beginning of that answer, but if you would just answer the question. What did you say to Alex without any background or explanation? What did you say to him?
I said, do you think she's going to also accuse you of sexual assault?
And how was Alex's demeanor when you made that statement?
He said he didn't know, but he wasn't worried about it because he had months worth of text messages to prove that it was a consensual relationship.
And were you personally concerned about living with Alex in this apartment?
Objection, irrelevant. No.
Well, I don't know what the answer is, so
Her concerns about Alex are irrelevant. It's 90404 and 90403, 90402, but in particular 90404, which we had all this hearing about.
I can rephrase.
I guess some indication where are you headed with that? Is this something we need to have a hearing outside the presence of the jury?
No,
or-
I can move on. Let me ask you this. Were you in a romantic relationship with Alex?
No.
But you two were going to move in together.
Yes.
Were you going to share a room or have different rooms?
It was a 2-bedroom apartment and we would have had separate rooms.
And do you know if Alex has any reputation for peacefulness?
Yes.
No foundation.
Okay,
Just talked about it.
I'm going to sustain on foundation. I think we just talked about that and the
Sure.
various elements of that.
Do you have an opinion whether Alex has a reputation for peacefulness?
Objection. Same objection. Repeated the
Sustained.
question.
Okay, do you have an opinion as to Alex's character for peacefulness?
Objection, 90404. No foundation.
Overruled. You may answer that question.
Yes.
Do you have an opinion as to Alex's character for peacefulness?
Yes, I found him to be very peaceful. He was very calm. He was kind of an old spirit, and I felt that we were very compatible as friends because of that.
No further questions.
Okay, cross-examination?
Ms. Knobs, I want to ask you some questions about your comments about this young lady here next to me, Ms. McCandless, okay? You with me? You said that you had a conversation with her in November, is that right?
I believe so, yes.
And then you bonded based upon both of your experiences in unhealthy relationships.
I believe I meant that the conversation was something that we could, both add to, but I don't know that it was like I didn't mean to suggest that we became friends after that.
I understand. You had a conversation,
Yes,
and the conversation was about unhealthy relationships.
yes,
Unhealthy relationships that both of you had been in.
yes.
An unhealthy relationship that she was in at the moment she was having that conversation.
I don't know whether she technically was in the relationship or trying to leave the relationship.
Trying to leave would mean that she hadn't left yet. Agreed?
Correct.
So she'd still be in it. Agreed?
Yes, but I don't know which she was.
Okay. Either in it or trying to leave it,
Yes.
but not yet left.
Yes.
And that in your, what you knew about regarding based upon that conversation and your with her, you found her to be weak and vulnerable. Agreed?
Yes.
I think another word you've used in the past is fragile.
Probably, yes.
You'd said you were friends with Alex, is that right?
Yes.
Alex had told you in the fall, November, December of 2017, that he was in a relationship, correct?
Yes.
He did not immediately disclose who that was, correct?
Correct.
He was secretive about that, agreed?
He was respectful of the privacy of that other person.
He was also not telling you, correct?
I wasn't asking.
You had to find out from somebody else other than your good friend who this person was that he was entering a relationship with, correct?
I would disagree with that.
You eventually found out who this person was,
Yes.
and you found that out from Alex.
From the things that he said and, you know, thinking about the things that he'd said, I figured it out.
So while he was respectful, he was certainly still telling you about that relationship, right? He
Mentioning that it existed, yes.
mentioned it existed. He also mentioned facts. He mentioned it was a male, correct?
I don't know that he said it was a male. I think he said he was seeing someone who was identifying as a male, possibly, but
So I appreciate that distinction. So he made mention that the person he was seeing identified as a male, correct?
yes.
And that he told you that things in that relationship would get kind of freaky, correct?
I don't know that he used that word.
You used that word when you spoke with the police in describing what he talked about regarding their sex, right?
Yes, I don't know that he used that word, but I do recall having conversations, yes.
So for whatever reason, when you talked about what Alex had talked about, you chose to use the word freaky, right?
Sure. Yes.
You agree with that?
Yes.
Your relationship with Alex, you said, was friendship, right?
Yes.
What we would commonly think of as platonic, correct?
Yes.
You did not have a sexual relationship with him, did you?
No.
You were not dating him, correct?
No.
There was no, like a better term, tension or attraction between the two of you in that category. Agreed?
Agreed.
Your knowledge of him and his character was based upon your platonic friendship that you had with him, correct?
Yes.
You didn't read his journals, did you?
I read some of his writing. I don't know what journals you're referring to, but I'd read some of his
So you're
writing.
familiar with his writing?
Some of it, but as a writer myself, I think people write differently depending on what they're writing.
Sure. Are you familiar with the portion of his journal from November 9th, 2015 on DOJ 2482, in which he writes, I half-heartedly try to isolate myself from you, afraid I would taint you, yet I love you. I am sorry for this failure.
Hold on, you said November of 2015?
I apologize, it's November of 2017, I misspoke. Yes, it's from November of 2017. It's DOJ page number 2482 from his, and I believe I'm allowed to do this on cross-examination.
Okay, go ahead.
Your Honor, are you, I'm
I'm-
objecting because this is not McMorris for a witness. McMorris as to what the defendant may have in mind regarding these journals, but not with Ms. Cobbs.
It's not McMorris evidence, it's going to rebut her opinion testimony, and I can say what she does or she doesn't know in order to bring in specific instances.
All right, well, first of all, I thought there was a relevancy objection, and that was based, I thought you said 2015.
I did,
So
I spoke.
I thought, well, that would not be relevant, but if it's this November of 2017, I will allow you to go into that on cross-examination.
Are you aware of his journal from November 9th, 2017, in which he wrote, "I've half-heartedly tried to isolate myself from you, afraid I would taint you, yet I love you. I am sorry for this failure on my part. I know my touch would kill you, yet I reach out. That is my sin, the violence of my flesh that I lack a soul to correct." Are you familiar with that writing by Mr. Woodworth?
No.
Are you familiar with his writing from December 3rd of 2017, in which he writes, "Merely doing as one will sexually makes consent irrelevant"?
No.
Are you familiar with his writing from October 29th of 2017, erotics always contain...
Objection, relevance. We don't even know if Ms. Hobbs has seen these. I mean, she's
Well,
seen.
that's the question, whether she has or not.
Right, so before he's reading them, I would prefer that she be shown them to see if she's actually seen these before they're read in open court.
I don't believe that that's the requirement. I get to cross-examine her to see if she knows something so that I can, for lack of a better term, discredit her opinion because it's based upon...
I'm going to overrule the objection. Go
And
ahead.
Your Honor, also it's the rule of completeness. These are entire long journals and they're taking sentences out of them to try to make them construe what they really are. So, I mean, if we're going to go down this line, then she should be able to see the entire article to understand what Alex is saying.
We have no objection to the admission of his entire writing history and catalog.
Well, due to confusion, waste of time, and so on, and I think we're going to get there at some point, so we're not going to go into the entire journal at this point. So go ahead, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you. Are you aware of his writing from October 29, 2017, which he writes, "Erotics always contains violence. That cannot be avoided. The secret is not avoiding the violence, but in living with it."
No.
You said that you met with him on March 10th, is that right?
I believe March 10th I went to the coffee shop,
You
yes.
saw him on March 10th, correct?
I believe so.
You made observations of him?
Yes.
And
Mr. Nelson, would you please put your microphone on while you're addressing the witness?
Thank you, Judge. Sorry about that. And when you met him on March 10th and made your observations, as you testified before, he seemed troubled. Agreed?
Yes, he wasn't, peppy and bouncing around the coffee shop like he often was.
He seemed troubled.
Yes.
And then you saw him on March 13th, correct?
Yes.
You spoke with him.
Yes.
He spoke with you.
Yes.
And then you understood he was upset.
Yes.
That's all. Thank you.
All right, any redirect?
Yes, are you familiar with a nihilist or the word nihilism?
Yes.
What is that?
From my understanding, it's kind of an outlook in which I could be very wrong, maybe you don't necessarily see a purpose in life as in, like there's a lack of religion and there's no afterlife and that everything just is as it is and things can't be explained.
And would you ever use that to describe Alex?
I think that as a philosopher, I don't know. He was incredibly intelligent, so I don't know that sometimes I understood his views on things, but he certainly was devoid of a religious outlook on life, I think, towards the end.
So would you think he was more concerned about himself or more concerned about others?
He was definitely more concerned about others.
And did you worry about him as a cannibalistic person, like he was going to eat you?
Never.
Did you worry about him being violent towards you?
Objection
Never.
beyond the scope, 90404.
No further questions.
Okay, any, I guess, recross, limited to the
Yes,
redirect?
I have one in particular. Are you familiar with his January 1st, 2018 resolution in which he writes, "I need to be more selfish"? And he goes on to say, "Selfishness needs to find a place in my values." Are you familiar with that?
No, but that sounds like something he probably would have written.
Thank you, that's all.
Okay,
Well, can I ask a follow-up to that?
I think that's it. You can step down. And she released from her subpoena?
Yes, Your Honor, but that was beyond the scope of my recross, so I feel like I should be able to ask a follow-up.
She
I didn't
asked-
ask about,
She asked if he was selfish, and she said no, and I...
Okay, I think that was within your redirect, so, within the scope. Okay, are you ready with your next witness?
yes, the state would call Brianna Larson to the stand. Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Allyson Kexel, Allyson Kexel.
Okay, I'm gonna have you speak up a little bit more. What is your occupation?
I am a barista at Racy Delene's Coffee Lounge.
Speak up even louder if you can.
Sorry, Andrea.
It's all right.
I am a barista at Racy Delene's Coffee Lounge.
Perfect. And do you know the defendant?
Yes.
And is she present in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Could you describe what she's wearing and where she is seated?
She is wearing a light pink blazer. She is seated to my left, to the court's right.
And prior to March 22nd of 2018, how long did you know the defendant?
Approximately a year.
And how often would you see her?
Most days of the week, probably 5 to 6 days.
Was this when she was living in Eau Claire, Wisconsin?
Correct.
And what would you and the defendant do together?
We, of course, spent a lot of time at Racy's together, talking, drawing. I served her when I worked there as a waitress. We would go for walks together. She would shoot photos. We would spend time doing art together occasionally.
And did the defendant talk to you about her relationships?
Yes.
And what did she say?
Objection, bang.
What did she?
Irrelevant.
I'll sustain on vagueness if you could be. just
Which
point.
relationships did she talk to you about?
Specifically Jason.
And are you referring to Jason Mengel?
Yes.
What, if anything, did she say about her relationship with Jason Mengel?
Objection, irrelevant.
Overruled.
Generally, our conversations were about how she felt uncomfortable in that relationship, micromanaged more so.
Did the defendant talk to you about her gender identification?
Objection. This has been document 298. There's much litigation about this.
I'm going to sustain the objection on that.
Can we have a sidebar, Your Honor, about
Yes. Go ahead.
What did the defendant say about her gender identification?
Mostly that she was fluid, meaning some days she felt more masculine than others, that she would off and on wear makeup, change the style of clothing that she would wear.
Okay. And were you aware that the defendant and Alex Woodworth were involved in a relationship?
Not until months after.
When did you learn that?
I can't recall.
Do you recall observing an argument on the date of a pop-up art show?
Yes,
And was that on February 24th, 2018?
that is correct.
Is that the date when you learned about the defendant and Alex being in a relationship?
I can't recall.
Okay. So can you take me to this day on February 24th? What did you observe that day? Were you at Racy's coffee shop?
Yes.
And did you observe an interaction between Jason Mengel and the defendant?
Correct.
What did you observe?
Jason had asked Ezra to come outside so he could speak with her. It was around the time that we had to leave. We were volunteers for the art show. And I went outside to bring her with me. I was giving her a ride there. And they were having what looked like a tense conversation outside in the parking lot.
And did you hear anything during that conversation?
I remember Jason saying something to the effect of,
Objection, hearsay.
Well, is this offered for the truth of the matter, or is this offered, what is the purpose for the,
It's just describing, it's not for the truth of the matter asserted, it's to describe the context of that argument.
Objection, irrelevant.
all right, well, court has made a provisional ruling. I'm going to allow it, so I'm going to overrule the objection.
he said something to the effect of being upset with her sleeping with his friends.
Okay. And what did you observe the defendant doing during this time?
Standing there kind of complacently, in distress. I had, from a distance, asked her if she was ready to go. She snapped at me and said no, that she was in the middle of something. So Brianna Larson and I went to the art show together. She was also a volunteer.
And so did you observe Jason Mengel talk to anyone besides the defendant?
Correct.
Who else did he talk to?
Alexander Woodworth and John Hansen.
Did you observe when Mr. Mengel was talking to those individuals?
Yes.
Was it one at a time or both
Correct.
together? One at a time?
Individually.
And so when you observed Jason Mengel talking to Alex, what was Alex's demeanor?
Collected. Cool.
Did it turn physical?
No.
Were you able to overhear yelling?
No. Most of us were inside. They were outside alone. But there was no yelling that I could see from inside.
And so you talked about how the defendant snapped on you when you were supposed to ask her to go outside or to leave the situation. Is that right?
Correct.
And so did you go to the art show without her?
Yes.
And did you later have communication with the defendant?
Yes.
How so? Did she call you or text you?
She sent me a direct message over Instagram.
And what did she say?
I can't quote that verbatim. Something to the effect of, she apologized for the way that she had talked to me.
And did she ever join you for the art show?
No.
During your friendship with the defendant, did she mention a person named John Hansen?
Yes.
And what did she tell you about John Hansen?
Objection, irrelevant.
Overruled.
Andrea, could you be more specific? We were all friends with John. So.
Okay. Was there a time where the defendant discussed spending a few days consecutively with Mr. Hansen?
That is correct.
And what did she tell you about that?
She told me that she had stayed there for the weekend and that she had participated in spending time with John and his son, and that they had made dinner together and things of that nature.
And did she appear upset?
Absolutely not.
Was there anything negative stated by the defendant regarding that few-day stay with Mr. Hansen?
No, she seemed excited.
So after the sort of pop-up art show event where Jason Mingle had those discussions. Did you see the defendant after that?
I don't believe so.
Did you learn if the defendant had moved?
Yes.
Do you know where she moved to?
Objection, no foundation. Irrelevant.
Well, I'm going to sustain irrelevance, unless you have,
That's fine. It's,
okay.
did the defendant talk to you about Alex Woodworth?
Occasionally. Just passing conversation. We all knew him, so just conversations as a friend group, I suppose.
Did she talk to you about having a relationship with Alex?
Not necessarily an intimate one, however, she did spend nights there occasionally.
Do you recall her telling you how Alex felt about her?
Yes, there was a conversation about that.
And
at
what
one
did she
point.
say?
She had told me that Alex had expressed intimate feelings for her.
Do you know what those intimate feelings were?
He, I believe, at some point or another had told her that he loved her.
And did you see the defendant and Alex together at Racy's?
Yeah.
And what did you observe?
Having conversations, sitting together on the couch, sitting closely at times, which wasn't anything uncommon.
And when you observed the defendant and Alex together, did the defendant appear afraid of Alex?
No.
Did you also learn that the defendant would also stay at Alex's house?
Yes.
Do you know when that was?
Multiple occasions, but I don't have dates.
I have no further questions.
Okay, cross-examination?
Ms. Kexel, you made observations of Ezra with Alex at Racy's, is that right?
That's correct.
And that was essentially from the fall of 2017 up until this
Mr.
event?
Knobs? Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. It was essentially from the fall of 2017 until this event in February 24th of 2018. Is that right?
Summer 2017 until March.
Until February 24th. of
Excuse me,
2018.
yes, until February 24th.
Okay. And it was during those times where you saw Ezra and Alex sitting on the couch together.
Correct.
They seemed to get along well.
Yes.
They were in close proximity, right?
Correct.
Smiling,
Sure.
talking.
Yeah.
And you learned from Ezra that according to Ezra, Alex had expressed his love for her, correct?
Correct.
And then February 24th, everything changed.
Sure.
That's all. Thank you.
Any redirect?
No.
Okay, you may step down. Thank you.
Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Brianna Larson, BriannaLarson.
What is your occupation?
I'm a barista.
And where do you work?
Racy's and Skill Shop.
Are those both coffee shops?
Yeah.
And
Skill Shop?
what city do you live in?
Eau Claire.
And back in summer of 2017 to March of 2018, did you also live in Eau Claire?
Yes.
And are you familiar with the defendant?
Yes.
And how do you know her?
I met her at Racy's.
And is she present in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Could you describe what she's wearing and where she is seated?
A light pink blazer, and she's sitting in the middle, on my left side, I guess.
And when did you first get to know the defendant?
I met her at Racy's. Jason brought her to Racy's and introduced me.
And Jason, do you refer to Jason Mengel brought her?
Yes.
And did you two become friends?
Yes.
Were you pretty close with her?
Yes.
Did she have a nickname for you?
Yes.
What was that nickname?
She called me her wife.
And how would you describe the defendant when you first met her?
I'd say she was pretty bubbly, easy to talk to.
Did the defendant talk to you about her personal relationships?
Yes, sometimes.
And when she talked to you about them, were they always about men?
Objection, irrelevant.
I can't remember.
Well, hold
fully.
on. What's objection is relevance?
Correct, Judge.
I'll withdraw the question.
Okay. All right, it's withdrawn.
When you became friends with the defendant, was she in a relationship with Jason Mengel?
Yes.
Did she talk to you about her relationship with Mr. Mengel?
Yes.
What, if anything, did she say about that relationship?
Sometimes it was regarding how he felt about how she was changing her image sometimes, and it didn't make her feel very good.
So what do you mean how she was changing her image?
Just like changing how she dressed or taking piercings out of her face she didn't feel was appropriate anymore. She just didn't feel like wearing them. And Jason, it was like Jason, how she described it, felt like he was, like the person he was in love with was changing.
So for like piercings, where did she have a piercing?
Septum,
Irrelevant.
septum piercing.
Objection, irrelevant.
Okay, hold on, stop. All right. Okay, Ms. Larson, if there's an objection, I just ask you to just stop and don't answer the question until it's been ruled on, okay?
Okay.
All right. Okay, so, Mr. Nelson, you made the objection,
Yes, sir.
and so I'm going to sustain on relevance as far as the,
I think it provides an explanation of the change of the defendant during this time, as well as context on their relationship.
well, the relationship, okay, but some of those other details I don't think are relevant.
Okay. So the defendant told you that so did the defendant talk to you about any other relationships besides her relationship with Jason Mengel?
Sorry, I just like need a moment. I'm pretty anxious right now.
Okay.
It was mostly just like him kind of putting her down about her image and changing it, but
Sure. So I'm moving on though. Is there any other relationships that the defendant talked to you about?
not that I remember right now.
Do you remember her talking to you about her relationship with Alex?
Yes.
And when I mean that, Alexander Woodworth.
Yes.
What did she say about her relationship with Alex?
I don't remember specifically exactly what was said, but
Objection, no foundation. If she doesn't remember, as she just stated, I don't think she gets to guess.
Well, I'm going to overrule your objection. If she can, has a gist of what was the conversation, I think that is sufficient, word for word. I don't think that's required. So I guess, Ms. Nodoff, please follow up with that. Just lay a little bit more foundation.
So what are you able to recall that the defendant told you about her relationship with Alex Woodworth?
they would just like hang out. Sorry, I'm having a really hard time right now.
Did the defendant say if she liked Alex or not?
Yes, it was all positive things. I do remember that, and I did see like the relationship in person as well, and
And what did you observe when you saw the two of them together?
they would sit close and they would giggle and laugh about things and I don't know, share drawings and literature.
Did you learn that the defendant moved out of Jason Mengel's apartment or house at some point in their relationship?
Yes.
Objection, irrelevant, and foundation. I don't know where the foundation is for this when she asked it in that manner, if she learned.
Well, to me, again, it sounds like a foundational type of question, so I'm going to overrule. Go ahead.
Do you know if Jason Mengel and the defendant lived together at some point?
They did.
Do you know when that was?
It was right before, I know that when she moved out, it was Valentine's Day.
Okay.
So I know it was up until that point. I don't remember when it started.
And where did the defendant live after she moved out of Jason's apartment?
I'm not sure of specific places. I know that her car was a place of staying, but I don't know if she stayed at specific places other than the car.
Did the defendant tell you what she and Alex would do together?
Yeah, they would, yeah, it was like a relationship. It wasn't like details, but they would go on dates, sleep together.
Okay. Did the defendant tell you she was scared of Alex?
No.
Did she ever tell you anything negative about her relationship with Alex?
No.
Did the defendant tell you that she was concerned about what was written in Alex's journals?
No.
Were you also friends with Alex?
Yes.
How long were you friends with Alex?
I'm trying to think of when I first started going to races. Might be 3 years ago now. I know it was in the fall time. I just got a new job and he'd work nights at races, and I went there for a new place to go and meet people. He was one of the first people that served me and became my friend there.
And would you and Alex, was it, you'd always hang out at races?
Yeah.
And did Alex talk to you about his relationship with the defendant?
Yeah, sometimes.
Did he talk about any feelings or emotions he had for the defendant?
Yeah.
And what did he say?
He did tell me that he did love her.
Do you know approximately how long the defendant and Alex were in a relationship together?
I don't know the specific dates. I know it was in the fall time. I found out about the relationship when I went to a fire and she was there and she told me about it. I think it was probably around October. I know it was starting to get cold out.
And do you know when their relationship ended?
Probably around February is my guess.
Okay. Did the defendant talk to you about John Hansen?
Yes.
And did she talk to you about spending time with John Hansen when Mr. Mingle was gone for a weekend?
Yes.
What did she tell you about that?
She told me that her and John hung out for a weekend and she drank a lot of wine and he helped her hold her hair up while she threw up and was just there for her, and she told me she had a really good time.
And when she told you she was having a really good time, did she appear upset?
No.
Did you learn that the defendant filed a report against John Hansen?
Objection, no foundation, it's false.
All right, what? I'm going to overrule it.
Can we have a sidebar, Judge?
All right. Excuse me. Objection is sustained, and Ms. Nodoff is going to rephrase your question.
Did the defendant talk to you about an investigation regarding a sexual assault?
I didn't hear it from her.
Okay, then I don't want you to go any further. And do you recall being at Racy's coffee shop on February 24th, 2018, the date of the pop-up art show?
Yes.
And what is this pop-up art show?
It's it's like an unknown place where the art show is, and it's released that day. So people wait to find out the location and see what art is there.
And did you have plans with the defendant for that show?
Yes.
What were those plans?
We were supposed to volunteer, just like help things go smoothly with the art there. Some of it was you could grab it or do other things with it, so we were just there to help people along with the art.
And did those plans change?
Yes.
And how did they change?
Jason came to Racy's that day very upset, and he found out about the affairs that were happening.
Objection, move to strike. Lack of knowledge, no foundation, opinion.
All right, I'm going to sustain, but if you just, Ms. Nolan, if you ask her what she observed, just
Sure.
stick to, and here's the thing, I know you're nervous, I don't want to get you more nervous, but you can only testify about what you know of your own knowledge, okay? And your own observations, not what other people are telling you.
I know.
Okay, so, Ms. Nodoff, go ahead with the question.
So did you observe a conversation between the defendant and Jason Mingle on that day?
I did. I didn't hear it. I could see it through the windows at Racy's outside.
Okay, so can you
And I could see Jason moving his arms a lot. He had a very angry face. And then he came inside and asked John to come outside with him. And then after he had John come outside with him, asked Alex to come outside with him. He had a very stern, angry voice.
And did you observe Alex Woodworth go outside?
Yes.
And what did you observe of Alex when he was out there with Mr. Mingle?
I couldn't see him through the window, but after Jason was done, I went outside, and Alex was just sitting on the bench. He was fine. I think that he was just like, I don't know. He was very calm about it.
Okay.
I guess.
And did Alex tell you what happened during that conversation?
We didn't really talk much about it. We had to go to the art show like right after, so I didn't really bring it up. I just asked him if he was okay, and he said yeah.
And so after this date, did you see the defendant again after the pop-up art show date?
Yeah, I did see them, but it wasn't as often, I guess. I did see them after.
I'm sorry, who's them?
The defendant.
Okay, and anyone else?
With the group? I'm sorry, can you repeat the
So
question?
you said you saw them together.
Oh, no, I just meant like her.
Okay.
Sorry.
And where would you see the defendant?
At Racy's. She'd come by sometimes.
And were you guys still friends?
Kind of. There was a lot of drama happening. I kind of just stopped talking. Didn't really want to be a part of it.
And after February of 2018, this pop-up art show, did you notice any change in the defendant's demeanor?
Objection, vague, irrelevant. Opinion, 90404.
Observe any change in her demeanor?
If she wants to talk about a specific date and how she made an appearance, but just a general opinion is 90404.
All right, well, I'm going to sustain the objection. If you have something specific, you can ask about that, but that's pretty general and open.
Sure. Did the defendant, you described her as kind of bubbly at first. Was she still a bubbly, friend when you saw her in February of 2018?
Not so much. I think there was times, but it seemed like she was going through a hard time.
And did the defendant ever talk to you about cutting herself?
Yes.
And what did she say?
Objection, vague, at the time.
Overruled.
We were at Racy's, we were outside, and it was night out, and we decided to smoke a cigarette, and she talked to me about how she cut herself. And so I talked to her about it, because I've also done that myself. It's just like reaching out. We just talked about it, and how sometimes you need a physical thing to break up the emotional pain.
Do you know when this conversation took place?
I believe it was either late of that year or right in the beginning of that year,
So either December or January of...
somewhere around that time.
Did the defendant show you where she had cut herself?
Yes.
And where was that?
It was on the arm.
What did you observe?
Even lines, I guess, on the arm. Wasn't too many. It was-
No further questions.
All right, cross-examination, Mr. Nelson?
Yes, thanks. Just follow up right away about that. How you doing? You okay?
Yeah, I'm doing fine.
Okay. Want to ask you some questions about this conversation you said you had with Ezra the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, okay?
Okay.
And it was about her telling you that sometimes it sounds like she was in emotional pain and she needed to break that up by doing something physical, correct?
Well, it was,
The cutting, that's what I meant.
right, we're
She
talking
told
about
you
the
that,
cutting.
and she told you that the reason she did it was she was in emotional pain and wanted to do something physical,
No, this,
break it up. That's what you'd said. Agreed?
she didn't specifically say that to me. I talked to her about it,
Okay.
and I said, it's okay. Like, I've done that sometimes. We can do that to break up the physical pain from the emotional pain, 'cause emotional pain can be too much.
Understood. I misunderstood it before. So these were your words that you shared with her.
Yes, talking to her about it.
Kind of a,
Trying to be a friend.
yeah, a mirroring. She tells you something and you're like, you're not alone.
Yes,
You're saying this happens, correct?
yes,
In fact, I suspect within your friend group, it's not uncommon. Within people your age that you've talked with within your friend group, it sounds like this act that you talked about, that's not uncommon.
Objection relevance.
I wouldn't assume that all my
Cross-examination.
friends.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Okay. We'll just stop. Court reporter didn't get it. Okay, so, Mr. Nelson, you asked the question, state objection, relevance. I'm overruling the objection. You can answer the question. I think you did, but do you remember what the question was? Because we didn't get it down. What was the answer to the question?
I'm kind of confused by the question.
Sure. You were talking about, as we're talking about cutting, and you're sharing that that was an experience that you've done, correct?
Right.
And my question to you is that act that you were talking about, of cutting, to, as you say, deal with the emotional pain with something physical. My question to you is, you would agree that that's not uncommon within your friend group?
I would say that I wouldn't know that. I feel like a lot of my friends have other ways of coping, and it's not always cutting.
Okay, but some other friends, and we don't need to name names, but some other friends have shared with you that that's something that they've done, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I just want to take you through chronologically here quickly. You met Ezra, she's bubbly, right?
Right.
Easy to talk to. Yes?
Yes.
Friendly,
Yes.
outgoing,
Yes.
trusting.
At the time, yeah, I didn't know her very well.
She was trusting of others. Not that you were trusting of her, she is trusting of others, correct? She was open and generous.
She was pretty open.
Okay, generous.
Yeah.
She talked to you about Jason Mengel, who she was living with, correct?
Yes.
Told you about how he was putting her down, correct?
Yes.
That he was, I think your terms were, she was worried about how he was changing her, correct?
No, he was worried about how she was changing her image, that she was changing. And he was nervous he was losing the person he loved.
This is what Ezra had expressed.
Yes, Ezra told me about, yeah.
So
the whole
Ezra
image
told
thing.
you about what Jason told her.
Yes, and then I later heard it from Jason,
Okay.
different time.
So Ezra was growing in a certain direction, and it sounds like Jason didn't like that direction in which she was growing or evolving, correct?
Correct. It seemed like he was getting nervous.
Okay. And then in February, on February 24th, you were at Racy's inside, correct?
Correct.
And you looked out the window and you saw Jason, right?
Correct.
And you saw Ezra.
Yes.
And Jason, you said, looked angry.
Yeah.
He was waving his arms around.
Yes.
Without hearing it, did it appear as if he was yelling?
Yes.
Pointing his finger or shaking his hands at Ezra?
Just doing, yeah, a lot of arm gestures.
Okay. And Ezra was complicit.
Yeah.
She stood there,
Yeah.
meekly.
I guess she just stood there.
She just stood there, correct? You didn't see her making any physical response. Agreed?
Not that I remember.
It did not appear as if she was even verbally responding. Agreed?
I suppose I couldn't hear anything, so I couldn't say.
But you didn't see anything to indicate that she was making words with her mouth, right?
No, I had a better angle of Jason.
Okay. Did you see Jason pause to appear to listen at any time, or was it just Jason was on an angry rant?
I don't remember fully, but it was mostly Jason speaking. Yes.
And then after that, you didn't see much of Ezra around Racy's. Agreed?
Agreed.
Prior to that, you'd heard that from her that her and Alex were also in a relationship, correct?
Correct.
And that Alex loved her, correct?
Correct.
And then on this February 24th, Alex was spoken to by Jason as well, correct?
Correct.
And what you heard was a stern, angry voice, correct?
Like I said, yes. When he came inside, he just said, "You need to come outside with me. I need to talk to you." And that's the voice I heard. It was stern and it was serious.
And when, after Jason had been done moving his arms and being angry at Ezra, did you see where Ezra went?
I know that after he was done
Did you see
speaking,
where Ezra went?
her and Jason went over into an alleyway area after he was done speaking to John and Alex. I don't know where she went while he was talking to them. I'm assuming outside on the side, but I don't know specifically where she was while he was talking to them.
She didn't come into Racy's.
I don't
She was
believe so.
she was out of your view.
Yes.
And then at some point you saw Jason go over and, for lack of a better term, collect her.
I couldn't see. At that point, there wasn't windows on that part. There's two big windows, and I could only see what was going on there, and she was not in my view.
Okay,
So I'm not sure.
So once Ezra left Jason, you didn't see Ezra again that night, correct?
No. We left Racy's to go to the art pop-up, and the last time I saw her that day was when she was talking to Jason by the alleyway at Racy's,
And so.
which is why she didn't show up. Sorry.
You're fine. I just want to make sure I get the chronology right.
Yeah.
We had Jason and Ezra outside, correct?
Yes.
You don't see Ezra anymore.
Right.
You see Jason yelling at Alex,
Correct.
Jason yelling at John,
Correct.
John and Alex leave. Or
Alex was still outside. I don't remember where John went.
you come
He
out,
might have still been inside. I know he came back inside.
you come outside and you observe Jason.
I only saw Alex on the bench. At this point, Jason and Ezra were off talking in the alleyway area.
So you came outside and you observed Jason.
I observed Alex.
In addition to observing Alex, you observed Jason.
I suppose. Not close.
Sure.
But yes.
You saw him with your eyes.
Yes. While I was leaving, yes.
And he was in the alley.
Yes.
And he
on
was
that
in the
area.
alley with Ezra.
Right.
And that's the last that you saw that night, correct?
Yes. Correct.
Okay. That's all I have. Thanks.
Any redirect?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Larson. That's all. You may step down. And she released from her subpoena, free to go?
She is for today, but she's not fully released.
Okay. So you may have some reason to recall her?
Yes.
Okay. All right. What would be the next witness, Mr.?
Next witness would be Court Fox, Your Honor. I expect he's going to be a while.
All right.
At least At least 40, half hour, 45 minutes, if not longer.
Okay, so, ladies and gentlemen, I think this is a good spot to break for today. We have some other things that we have to talk about that hopefully will save some time tomorrow. So we're going to excuse you for the evening. Now, before you leave, again, I want to remind you how important it is that you not discuss the case amongst yourselves or discuss this case with anyone else or allow yourselves to be exposed to any sort of media, whether it's social media, news, on TV, radio, and so forth. Again, as members of the jury, it's very important that you not get any information outside of the courtroom while this trial is going on. There may be people commenting, there may be misinformation, and there's a very big possibility it can contaminate you as jurors in terms of what information is evidence in this case as opposed to things that cannot be considered in this case. So I ask that you not do any research. Again, I should just put it this way. I'm ordering that you not do any research, or that you not seek out any information or listen to, talk about, or observe anything about this case. Anybody have a problem with that? Okay, very good. And then we're going to start with you, ladies and gentlemen, at 8:30 tomorrow morning. So as long as you're here, we appreciate your patience. You were all here on time today. We very much appreciate that. So we're going to excuse you for the evening. All rise. Okay, I want to go back to the sidebars that we had during these last few witnesses. The most recent sidebar, about 4:05 p.m., during the testimony of Ms. Larson, there was an objection that the defense and Mr. Nelson made when there was reference to us filing a sexual assault report or filing a report of sexual assault, something along those lines. We had a sidebar. Mr. Nelson, anything else that you want to put on the record with respect to that objection?
No, Your Honor, sustained the objection, and the state moved along, so.
All right. Ms. Nodoff, anything else you'd like to put on the record regarding that?
No.
Okay, and just for clarification, for future witnesses, as I understand it, and we're going to hear evidence about how all that came about, that evidence is not yet in the record. However, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that the defendant did not actually go and file a complaint or report with a law enforcement agency, that it came up as a result of someone else calling the police, and then there ended up being an investigation, but it wasn't that she went and filed a report. Anybody disagree with that at this point?
Judge, I think it's a little bit splitting hairs. The incident, there was somebody else called the police, responded to Josh Trankler's house. That's who called the police. It was because Jason Mengel and Ezra had come over to the residence, and Jason was upset about John Hansen. The officers who responded talked to Ms. McCandless, and she actually was given the opportunity to talk somewhere else. She requested that they go to the police department to speak. That's where she described multiple incidents of unwanted behavior at the hands of John Hansen. So
That's not correct.
There are police reports which detail this information, and
I believe I've read those police reports, but that's my understanding of how this came about.
I agree with how it came about. I don't agree with his summary of her statements. Her statements are recorded, and
Well, and again, there will be a witness related to what she said about that, and I'm assuming the state will put that on. Okay, so, but maybe it is splitting hairs a little bit, but I think given the pretrial rulings and so forth, I mean, the court is going to allow the evidence of those facts and circumstances, but had ruled that the state is not allowed just to say she filed for the purpose of attacking her credibility and saying she filed a false report. As I've indicated, it may appear, when all the facts are out, but that maybe she was less than candid, maybe not, but that's not the point of allowing that testimony in. The point of allowing that testimony in is for the background panorama evidence as in the court's provisional ruling. So in any event, go back to the next most recent sidebar, I believe, was Ms. Kexel was on the stand, and I didn't know the specific time. Oh yeah, 3:42 p.m. I'll call it a double sidebar because we had a sidebar and then we returned to that. This related to, it was the defense had made a motion in limine previously about excluding lay opinion testimony. I believe at the sidebar we basically clarified that the witness could testify to what she observed and what was what Ms. McCandless had said, but they could not be giving opinions about Ms. McCandless struggling with gender identity. And counsel, either Mr. Nelson, Ms. Nora, wish to make any further record with respect to that?
That's an accurate resuscitation of what we said.
Okay, Mr. Nelson.
That's accurate, and if the defense preference is if the state is going to do that, since there is a very narrow purpose of that and a narrow way to put that in, we will not be objecting if they simply lead and lead very directly to make sure that they're only saying what the court has ordered they can say. What did you see? What did Ezra tell you? Those things alone.
All right, and then again, the court had ruled that we're not having people's opinions, that's not relevant, what their opinion was. Okay, anything further on that? Okay, as it relates to, I think really what is sort of an unresolved issue, and that relates to section 90405 subsection 2 and any specific instances of conduct, would ask the council overnight if you would kind of refine your positions on that, and we'll take that up. And unless you want it, you're prepared to make some more argument about that now. I don't know that I'm going to be able to get through State versus Evans in just a couple of minutes.
I think, Your Honor, Evans and is probably is a good case as it relates to that. It makes it very, it goes through methods of proving character and talks about this, and it goes through the committee notes to Federal Rule 405. In that case, it didn't allow it, but that was because essentially in Evans, the specific instances of conduct were instances of the complaining witness in that case having lied, and it was a case of sexual assault, I believe, if I recall correctly. But at any rate, yes, sexual assault, and there were specific instances where they claimed that the witness had lied, and the court said, that's not an essential element. Whether she is a liar or not a liar is not an essential element of the offense. Here we're dealing with character for peacefulness, which, because of the defense, is an essential element. Certainly, it's not an element that we have to prove normally in first-degree intentional homicide. Counsel is correct. There are normally two elements. However, because of the fact that the defendant has raised self-defense, and I believe they're going to have a sufficient basis and meet their I don't know if I want to, I'm not sure that's exactly a burden of production, but at any rate, there's going to be sufficient evidence for them to get an instruction on self-defense. Under those circumstances, we have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant was not acting in self-defense, and a part of that is going to be the character for peacefulness of Alex Woodworth, because that's a portion of what we can use to prove that she was not in fact acting in self-defense, because we're entitled to prove his character as part of our proof that she was not acting in self-defense. The statute specifically, 90404, specifically permits that, and 90405 describes how you can prove it. And because it is an essential element of the case, that we prove that she was not acting in self-defense beyond a reasonable doubt, it becomes an essential element of the case that we can prove by specific instances of conduct. That's essentially our argument.
Judge, and we disagree. If
I understand you disagree.
Well, but I just want to, the defense is her state of mind. And I understand that the state can put in character evidence of his reputation or opinion for nonviolence. But specific instances of conduct, that's different. And the reason it's different is specific instances of conduct have nothing to do with her state of mind, her belief. If whatever these specific instances of conduct, which the state has still not told us about, but if they had any specific instances of conduct that they had reason to believe Ms. McCandless was aware of, I think that might be applicable. I'm not saying it is, but only under that scenario. But if it's somebody else's experience, and there's nothing to connect that to Ms. McCandless having knowledge or awareness of that experience, I don't see how that would get in, especially when, in this case, Your Honor has already ruled that the defense is prevented from putting into evidence any character evidence of Mr. Woodworth regarding his writings post this February 24th event, after which Ms. McCandless no longer had access or read or spoke with Alex. And so under that reasoning, if the reasons that those later portions of his journal are not admissible is because Ms. McCandless didn't know about them, how then can the state come back and say, we're going to put these specific instances of conduct in that some other witness knew about, but no proof that Ms. McCandless knew about, so it is not essential to their disproving her belief or the reasonableness of her belief, because they have no foundation to say she knew about it in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I don't believe that it is the same. You're, again, I think conflating the McMorris evidence, the McMorris rule, basically, and the court not allowing other information or other character evidence that the defendant was not aware of. That's different. I don't believe that specific instances of conduct would have to be something that she would be aware of under the circumstances under 90404 and 90405 in a homicide case where, again, the defendant has essentially made a claim, and at this point, not by evidence, but by opening statement, essentially, that he was the first aggressor. I think that's the rule. Now, I'm trying to think of how, ever a character trait would be a essential element of a charge, a claim, or defense if it wouldn't be under these circumstances. So, but that's, I'm going to do some reading and sleep on that.
And again, with Court Fox, just so that the court and everybody's aware, the testimony is going to relate to specific discussions he had with Alex about the use of self-defense, the use of violence in self-defense, which conversation occurred in sometime during March of 2018. He doesn't remember the exact date. It is clearly after the breakup between the defendant and Alex, because there was also discussion of the breakup and whether or not Alex was going to be interested in going back with the defendant if she was interested in it. So it's all part of the same discussion. So it occurs in a time frame very, very near to the events at issue here. So it's not, I don't think a quote specific instance of conduct, close quote, but a discussion as to Alex's state of mind and what he would do and his beliefs as it relates to violence. And as such, I think is, so I don't know that it's not technically specific instances of conduct.
Well, if it isn't, then why would it be otherwise admissible then?
I believe it would be, it's a discussion, it comes in as it's a hearsay exception for then existing mental or emotional state as far as its admissibility, as far as the hearsay portion of it, and as far as relevance, it goes towards his character trait for peacefulness.
Okay, Mr. Nelson, I know
he says it's not being offered as a specific instance regarding character trait, but then he finishes his argument by saying it goes to his character trait. And so they're trying to offer it in under 90404. And the only way you offer it in under 90404 is opinion or reputation or a specific instance of conduct. And they've conceded it's not a specific instance of conduct. We think we would all agree it's not opinion, it's not character, so it's not admissible.
Okay, well, I'll let you finish up your arguments tomorrow on that.
But just part of that, Judge, is when it talks about conduct, that's different than hearsay. What people say they're going to do, I don't think has as much weight as what somebody observes somebody actually doing. Actions are what we're talking about.
Okay, now, the next question is, do you have any other witnesses where this is going to be an issue tomorrow? And if so, what would be the specific instances of conduct?
Don't believe so, Your Honor.
Can you tell us who the witnesses are for tomorrow?
Hang on, I was going to get to that, but I just, and I would, again, appreciate a little bit of a heads up or what I need to prepare for tomorrow.
I believe it's just Court Fox, and he's our first witness.
And if we're on Court Fox, and I just heard in passing that Mr. Fox may testify about the journals. I understand if he can lay a foundation, the journals could be admissible through Court Fox. We're not saying that's not the case. I don't know if he's going to be up there giving his interpretation of somebody else's writing. Again, perhaps I'm paranoid, but I'd heard mention that he was going to talk about the journals. So.
And he is going to explain what they mean. Counsel has tried to, read very limited portions of journals and try and paint a picture. And I believe based on that the state is entitled to give the jury what it actually means by considering the whole of, he quoted to Ms. Knobs 3 articles. I'm going to ask Mr. Fox if he's read those whole articles. He is also a philosophy major. He had numerous discussions with Alex about philosophy. They would sit at the joint and discuss philosophy for hours on end. And I will ask him I'm going to ask him overnight to read those 3 articles that in their entirety that counsel quoted a very short snippet of. And actually there are 4, I'm sorry, not 3.
But my recollection here today is that he asked Ms. Knobs whether she was aware of it, and she wasn't aware of those. And technically, that isn't into evidence yet.
I understand, but they were also mentioned, those same articles or same journal entries were also mentioned in opening statement, Your Honor. The exact same quotes were read by counsel during opening statement. And to give the impression that Alex acted in conformity with them, that Alex had that character trait, that's exactly how counsel portrayed them in opening statement, which I think is a misstatement of what their purpose was supposed to be, but counsel portrayed them in that fashion. And I think based on that, we're entitled to explain to the jury through Mr. Fox and potentially in rebuttal after the defendant testifies through Dr. Meyer, what those writings actually mean.
And Judge,
to give the jury the correct impression of what they are.
Judge, our position would be this. If they want to enter the journals, they can enter the journals. I read directly from the journals. We are not offering an interpretation of the journals other than Ms. McCandless's beliefs, which is relevant. A different party's interpretation of these journals is opinion evidence, which has not been disclosed, and it's irrelevant what they think those journals mean. Some other person's interpretation of it is not relevant in any way, shape, or form. And again, it's opinion evidence. If they want to put in the journals, we've conceded you can put in the journals and then they can argue about it in closing and we can argue about what they mean. But we don't get to call witnesses to say, what do you think this means? This isn't a literature class. We're not going to be discussing the meanings of these things other than Ms. McCandless's beliefs, because that's the only thing that's relevant. Third parties is not.
Well, the reasonableness of her beliefs obviously becomes an issue as well. So that's where I believe that, somebody that can put some context into this, maybe it wouldn't. I'm not going to decide right at the moment here, but I believe that's why it would be, though, appropriate for there to be an opportunity to have someone who may be a philosophy student or colleague or what have you, but that goes to the reasonableness of the beliefs. Perhaps Ms. McCandless, she saw it one way, somebody else maybe didn't, she didn't have the opportunity to hear what Court Fox or this other person, would say they meant and have a debate about it. But in any event, I was sort of anticipating that was become later in the trial. But that Court Fox that's what you plan to get into some of that tomorrow.
Yes, Your Honor. And I mean, counsel in his opening statement, read these things and said almost exactly that Alex that Alex was this person, that this is the type of person that Alex was. Counsel said he's a nihilist and described what a nihilist is, which I don't believe is actually an accurate description of what a nihilist is, but said that Alex is a nihilist, that he doesn't care about anything else. He'll do whatever the hell he wants. I probably added the profanity, but do whatever he wants whenever he does, which isn't an accurate description of what a nihilist is. And I think we're entitled, because counsel put it in that fashion in his opening statement, which I believe, frankly, is incorrect, because the only purpose that they were allowed for is to show that the defendant knew about them and what's in the defendant's mind. But the defense argued in their opening statement, and it was argument, we didn't object, we let it go, but argument that that's what Alex was and that's the type of person that Alex was. And I think we're entitled to respond to that. And that's exactly what we intend to do through Mr. Fox.
That's not what I said. I said,
Well-
Ezra knew, blah, blah, blah. Ezra knew, and it was her knowledge, her mindset, her belief. I didn't say he was. It was all in the context of what Ezra knew. It's her mind.
I'll just say it was an opening argument and not necessarily just an opening statement, but nobody objected. But I agree with the state that, there was, it was pretty much an argument about who Alex Woodworth was.
You can go back I was very particular. I printed out every word, Judge, and I understand it might have been perceived as an argument, but my statements were statements about what Ezra knew.
All right. Well, now, as Ms. Vishney had asked, who do you expect? And Court Fox, continuing with Ms. Wisniewski, Max Martinson, David Stoiding, and Mr. Zachow?
Yes.
And what about?
I've got all those.
What about Ms. Wolver? These are the same people that were expected to testify today. So, in addition to those left over from, that we didn't get to today,
Next would be, after Mr. Zachow, Matt Schreiner, Officer Susan Zwiefelhofer, Officer O'Neill, Chester Davidson, and we have to do Olivia Earl tomorrow.
I'm sorry. I missed one of these names. Matt Schreiner, Officer O'Neill, Chester Davidson, Olivia what?
Olivia Earl,
And who else?
Susan Zwiefelhofer.
Susan Weefel. Who is she?
I know who she is.
Okay. And what about, wasn't there the crime lab photo person who wasn't available or something? Are they coming tomorrow?
No, Miss Wobbler is not coming tomorrow.
Okay. So did I get every name? Schreiner, O'Neill, Davidson, Earl, Zwiefelhofer.
Yeah.
all right. Any other issues council can alert the court to that might take some time tomorrow? Very good. Then can I ask that council be here? I'd like to start at 8:20 for council. And then so we can start with the jury right at 8:30. Okay. All right then. Bob will continue. We're in recess for the evening.